The city really does not say yay or nay on the special district. It's more of a cursory review. The under state statute, if I believe correctly, Nina, shake your head yes or no. The developer can do the special district regardless of whether the city says yes or no. I believe it's more of a cursory review. Is that kind of sort of?
The district court approved the plan. The city had to review it in some sense, but
so we offer comments, basically review and comment, but the city doesn't really approve it. We just, or the council offers review and comments. So this special district, now that it's approved, would allow an additional 50 mills on the property. So there's a tax that would be added again to fund all the infrastructure. So this special district could sell bonds and raise the money to put in the infrastructure. So the applicant proposes to rezone the planned development to allow 125 townhouses, up to 125 townhouses and 180 condos. However, the total number of units can't exceed 262. According to the planned development, 162 of these condos have to be less than 1,100 square feet. 100 of the townhouses have to be less than 1,500 square feet. And the purpose of that, and the applicant will talk about that, is the intent is if they keep these smaller than the market would allow, then the theory is that it would reduce the cost of the units so that it would be more affordable. There's going to be 9 condo buildings and 18 townhome buildings. And as I said, they propose to regulate the cost of these by the size of the condos or the townhouses, so smaller than the market would actually allow. The applicant proposes a height of up to 45 feet. They have proposed a new road, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that is about 600 feet up the southern part of Pine Slope, so it sort of would cut up the mountain. This road could exceed 10% in some places, and there would be some pretty significant retaining walls on this road. So far, so good. Am I doing too quickly? I'm trying to blow through this the best I can. Here's just some pictures. The upper left-hand corner is what the property looks like from Montaigne. The right-hand one is from the site looking down towards Idaho Springs. And you can see the other two. One of them is west from Long Range Mountain, and then one of them looking from the site to Echo Mountain. These pictures were provided by the applicant. There's probably 2 feet of snow up there, so it's tough to get up there right now and do a site visit. This is Bluetooth, so sometimes this runs about 5 seconds behind the slideshow that I'm doing. This road alignment is very similar, if not exactly the same, as the one that was approved with the plat. They did this. The applicant will probably talk about this because this was the most logical configuration. However, the difference is that here is Soda Creek Road. The other one, the plat, the road kind of came up this way. In this particular case, you come down Soda Creek Road, you make this left here on South Pine Slope, and then this new road cuts up the mountain and takes off here. The reason why they did that is because the applicant is trying to minimize the impacts of traffic driving up this dirt road here at Pine Slope. So they're diverting the traffic from this development around those existing houses. So the applicant made several proposals. The first one in May was a plan development submittal, but there was no plan development that was ever submitted, and I think there was an issue with their team. Because this was never submitted, staff tried to work with the applicant to see if we could do something very simple in order to bring this to hearing. When we sent this out on review, the first plan development, we scheduled a tentative hearing. We did a site visit. We talked to some different review agencies, and we had some pretty significant concerns about the proposal. We told the applicant what these concerns were in a very long email. For those of you that have enjoyed reading the 200-page packet, you'll see all of those emails between me and the applicant. We told the applicant we weren't going to support the proposal as it was. The applicant withdrew. We talked to the applicant for some time, and the applicant's proposal was to actually give us a full plan development. Staff's job was to review that plan development for major flaws and to help them get the best plan development to public hearing as they could. So even though staff didn't support the upzoning, we wanted to make sure that there was a very good plan development that came to the public hearing, so if it was approved, we would have the best case scenario. So that's where we're at today. The number of units originally was about 480. They've been reduced to 264, and the applicant, the hearing dates that you're having now are at the request of the applicant. So what's it doing? Okay, so I'm not going to go through all these, but in our land development regulation, there are certain findings that need to, the criteria that are supposed to be considered when you're deciding whether or not you should support a rezoning. And I'm going to run through these briefly because this is what staff judges their recommendations on, is what's in the municipal code. The first one talks about whether the zoning is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. It's important to mention that our comprehensive plan, this is an area that's shown in the comprehensive plan that could possibly be recommended for multifamily. It talks about that there could be a mix of uses, and the multifamily could be there to offset costs. Now, the reason why we have that, I'll show that in a minute. And here is the map. This is the potential multifamily sites map. And these orange polygons show the areas in the city where if somebody wanted to do multifamily, these are some of the areas that they could consider. Now, the intent of that was that we wanted to see if it could be more efficient use of infrastructure and land by allowing clustering of smaller uses or units versus sprawling them out all over the mountain, reducing footprints, trying to be more efficient with the services and providing a diversity in housing. And also, the other reason why this recommendation was in the comprehensive plan is if something was built there and it was multifamily, it would require final development plans. And final development plans are very detailed, specific development plans that have to go through Planning Commission and City Council, so it would double the amount of public input that would be required. Now, although this is recommended, it says, well, this is one of the places where multifamily could occur. It doesn't say that it has to, and it also doesn't really suggest what the density is. The Bristol-Cone Pines plat is 45 units. They're proposing 264, which is about 6 times what the zoning, the plat would allow. The applicant at this time has stated that at least 150 units could be built under the present zoning. Staff has asked them to demonstrate that, to show us how that could be done. They haven't done that, but they say we could get maybe up to 150 units under the existing zoning. Other than the recommendation that multifamily might be appropriate here, there are a few other things that the staff could find that comply with the comprehensive plan. We believe that the massive scale is out of scale with the neighborhood. The density is twice that of the surrounding area and 6 times of the existing plat. It's not infill development that takes advantage of existing infrastructure and services, which is what the comprehensive plan recommends. All of the residents in this area, or almost all of them, would have to be required to drive. They wouldn't be able to walk. And when you're doing a mixed-use, higher density project, you're assuming that people can walk into town. In this particular case, you wouldn't be able to do that. They're proposing a height of 45 feet, in which the comprehensive plan says it might be appropriate, but you're supposed to be able to demonstrate why that height is required and why that's the minimum height required for a project without impacting the adjacent neighbors. And we have not seen that demonstrated. So there isn't any enforceable standards to regulate view corridors. There are some of the adjacent buildings, which I'll talk about in a little bit, are proposed to be very close to existing houses, and these buildings are going to be pretty tall and pretty large. It doesn't comply with some of the environmental chapter, and I'll talk about what the Colorado geologist had to say. But they actually had, the Colorado geologist responded to this and said that they had concerns with this rezoning. One of the issues that I call out specifically that's required in the comprehensive plan is to look at this in regard to traffic. And if the Planning Commission has more detailed stuff, I have the engineers here because I'm not an engineering geek. They would be the ones. However, there's some language in the comp plan that talks about that streets effectively accommodate transit and safety, and that they should be public spaces versus just traffic infrastructure. The applicant submitted a traffic study for this project. Because they're asking to go from 45 possible lots up to 265 units, that's an increase in traffic. So they have to provide a traffic study from a traffic engineer that shows that the roads that they have can accommodate that development, or that the roads that they have can be improved to accommodate that development. So the access will occur obviously from Minor Street. You'll have to turn left or right from Minor Street, and then go southbound on Soda Creek Highlands to get Soda Creek Road to get there. You'll come up Soda Creek Road past the Hot Springs, and then you'll turn up the South Pine Slope entrance. So existing Pine Slope Road, as I said, through the existing neighborhood is very narrow, it's dirt, and it's steep. This proposal includes cutting a new road up the steep hillside, about 600 feet south, 600 feet north of the South Pine Slope entrance. Again, this was done to try to divert the traffic around the existing neighborhood. The traffic study recommends that there should be turn lanes at Minor Street and at the Soda Creek intersection. It recommends that Minor Street and Soda Creek Road should be upgraded to major collectors. So right now, because of the amount of traffic, they're what's known as minor collectors, and there's a certain road template that needs to be built in order to be a minor collector. And if you're kicking from a minor collector up to a major collector, then there are certain improvements that are required, but there is no land or right-of-way in order to be able to do this. We've had the engineers go out and look at this, and there's really nowhere that these roads can be widened or improved. Minor Street is about 35 feet wide. Soda Creek Road is 54 at its widest point. And the county, Clear Creek County, also recommended widening South Pine Slope Road, which is the entrance into their main road, and that also doesn't have any room to build improvements. One of the things that the comprehensive plan talks about is whether there's been material changes in the character of has the neighborhood changed, has the character changed, which justifies this rezoning. The applicant's cover letter talks about that the changes in the neighborhood includes the adoption of a new comprehensive plan, revisions to the code, improvements to the surrounding roads, and the rezoning of the Argo. So Soda Creek Road has recently been rebuilt. Minor has recently been rebuilt. This is mostly because of bad infrastructure and the fixed drainage issues. They haven't really been widened. But staff does not believe that these would constitute material changes in the neighborhood to justify a rezoning. The houses in the Pine Slope neighborhood, this neighborhood has existed there since the property was annexed in the late 70s, and there's been very little changes in that neighborhood that staff is aware of. They asked whether this would preserve and promote property values in the neighborhood. There's 11 single-family residences there now, the Pine Slope neighborhood, on about 3.5 acres. The proposal that you're seeing tonight is more than twice the density and 6 times as much as the plat. There are several large buildings that are shown on the road configuration that are within about 150 feet from the existing residences right up the hill. The road network has been identified by the traffic study as inadequate, and staff is not convinced that this preserves and promotes any property values in the neighborhood. Another one talks about whether the development of the property is in harmony and compatible with the surrounding land uses in the area. And again, staff doesn't believe 264 multifamily units surrounded by single-family residential up to 45 feet high, with some of the buildings being within 150 feet of the residential, served by roads already identified as inadequate, would be considered in harmony and compatible with the surrounding area. And then there's one that talks about whether the proposed rezoning would promote the public welfare. One of the things that staff has been talking about with the applicant is that there's a critical housing need in Idaho Springs, which I'm sure the applicant will talk about. We have very little housing to provide housing for our teachers and our firefighters and our city planner who couldn't afford to live in Idaho Springs and some of these other people. So we do agree that this would provide a diversity in housing. The housing element of the comprehensive plan recommends a diversity in housing. And the applicant, we do agree with the applicant that because they're setting some size limitations on these units, that this would probably keep the cost of these units below what would be required by the market. And that would be a public benefit. If there is actually housing that's available to workforce housing, teachers, policemen, police people, that would be a public benefit. However, other than that, we're not sure if there's any other promotion of the public welfare. We think the impacts probably would outweigh the benefits. And also because of the cost of the infrastructure and the special district that's going to be required, adding taxes to this, we're not convinced these are actually going to be affordable units. Then there's also a criteria that talks about whether denying this would impose an undue hardship on the owner. I'm pretty confident the owner is going to argue today that it will. Our position is that it's already zoned R1. You could already plant it into 45 lots. It could be feasibly developed right now, depending on how much the houses are, how big they are, how much infrastructure you want to build. If you have to build a lot of infrastructure to build a lot of houses, then you can scale it back and build less houses that would require a whole lot less infrastructure. Whether or not it's possible to be on a well and septic and not have to put in the water and sewer lines, I don't know, but that's another possibility. But we do not agree that there's a hardship that deprives the applicant of reasonable use of the property. One of the analysis talks about whether this plan development adequately mitigates adverse impacts. And as I talked about, in the staff report, it says that the plan development does have restrictions on lighting. So how lighting has to be downcast and can't shine into the adjacent neighborhood. So we do believe that would mitigate those impacts. We also believe that building a road to divert traffic around the existing neighborhood would reduce the majority of the impacts for the people living in that neighborhood. However, the rest of the impacts on the transportation system, the beginning of South Pine Slope Road, Soda Creek Road, Minor, all of those impacts are going to be very difficult, if impossible, to be able to mitigate. We don't believe that the visual corridors are being maintained, which is what the comprehensive plan recommends. The Colorado Geologic Survey, so the state geologists had serious issues with this proposal and said because of the slope that they want to see it demonstrated that this density could be supported and have asked for a soils report. A soils report is not required of rezone. Okay, and that's required at the time of the final development plan. So if they went forward, then we would require them to show us a final development plan with the actual designs of the buildings. But the Colorado geologist has said they have serious issues with the slope and the landfall hazard there. And then finally, one of the intents of the plan development is that a plan development is a proposal to have relief from the zoning, to have some kind of deviation from the zoning for higher or more or less or something. And usually the trade-off is that we get a higher quality development, or we get some kind of development that wouldn't otherwise not be built under current zoning, but we're getting a better project, and there's some kind of negotiation between the applicant and staff. Now the proposal does allow an increase in density. It has some things like lighting restrictions, and it would also require additional public hearings for the housing. But other than that, we're not really convinced that the plan development proposes any significant improvements in design or amenities other than what already be required by the land development regulation. Am I going too quick? I know I talk very fast, and I usually sound a lot faster than I hear. So if I'm going too quick, I'm trying to not lose everybody because it's a lot of information. There was a community meeting held in December of 2018. At least 45 people signed in. There was more than that, but that's who we had on the list. There was a second community meeting held in December at which 19 people signed in. We got a slew of comments from most of them were about traffic and density, safety of the roads, property values, whether or not they were going to become rental properties, how much the infrastructure would be, whether or not they would actually be affordable. I just put this picture in for fun. This is a picture of the community meeting that happened in December, so if you're in there, you can wave at yourself. This project, when the formal application came in, this was referred to 24 different governmental agencies, so police, fire, Clear Creek County, CDOT, all these different agencies, as well as all of the citizens in Pine Slope have requested 15 different addresses, and a few others have requested to get email blasts or updates on anything that was happening with this. So we sent them all proposals about this. We sent them all information that this formal application had come in. The notification of this hearing tonight was mailed to all property owners within 300 feet of the property. There were 3 signs posted. This was posted on the website as well as the social media page. Seems like everybody had no problems finding out about it. Staff received comments from Public Works that had concerns about the traffic. We received concerns from the city engineer about the traffic and the roads. Clear Creek County also said they had issues with the traffic and the roads. And then again, Colorado Geologic Survey, they had issues with the density and whether or not that could be built on the soils and the topography as it existed. In addition to that, staff has received a very large amount of emails and letters. You're welcome, Planning Commission. I provided them all in their packets so they could read them all. So hopefully you enjoyed that. So in summary, this comprehensive plan states that multifamily might be appropriate there. The project would provide a diversity in housing. Possibly it could be housing for workforces. The housing costs, however, we think would probably be less than what would be built under market conditions. So whatever you would propose or whatever you would charge for a condo or an apartment, probably keeping them smaller than the market probably would keep those costs less. Although we do have concerns that the mill levies from the special district would increase that cost to maybe up higher than it would have been to begin with. The proposed density is 6 times what's allowed by Bristol cones and twice that of the Pine Slope neighborhood. There's a new road and significant retaining walls that are proposed for primary access. At least 2 of those buildings that were shown on the plan are about 150 feet from existing residences and would be very visible. The applicant has not demonstrated any density more than 45 lots could be feasibly built under the present zoning. The project would be a high density at the extreme periphery of the city, requiring significant infrastructure and not walkable to town. The traffic study recommends significant improvements that likely cannot be accommodated. Colorado Geologic Survey has expressed concerns, and the applicant has reasonable use of the property under the existing zoning. Oops, back up here. So staff believes the impacts of this rezoning would outweigh the benefits. Staff finds that this is supported by one of the 9 review criteria set forth in the land development regulation, and that only criteria really is about more housing and the diversity in housing. Staff concludes that this is unsupported by most of the other facts and circumstances on the comp plan and the city code. However, if the Planning Commission were inclined to recommend approval, staff would recommend removing use area 1 because that's owned by the city and we don't want to rezone that as part of this. With that, any questions before I turn it over to the applicant?
Yeah, well done. Do they have access to the property without the city property? Why was the city property included?
I'll leave that to them. I think there was some question, from what I understand, I think there might have been some confusion. When the Bristol Cone plat was done, use area A was actually dedicated to the city as an open space. So we own that, but I'll let the applicant, I think maybe there could be some questions with the transfer of title and all that, but I talked to the county, and the county said it looks like the city owns it, but they didn't do an entire title search. So we think we own it. The requirement of the Bristol Cone plat said that we were supposed to take it, but we didn't actually do the legal research for the title work to see that. But we believe we own it. That's probably the best answer I could give you, and I'd probably defer to the applicant for anything else.
Is the Metro District for the taxes just on new construction, so it doesn't affect the existing property owners?
Correct. So anybody that's living there now would be affected. All of the people, basically what would happen is within that area, the Metro District, for instance, could sell bonds, and that bonds would be used to put in all the infrastructure that's required for this project. And then when the people buy the houses or the units, there would be an additional tax added to pay back the improvements for whatever that unit was that they bought. Any more questions or comments for me? Yeah,
we will reserve you for later.
Council,
please, real quick, is the traffic engineer as part of the staff report, or we save them for later?
Yeah, I would say whenever Alan wants to bring them up, or if it's whether it's now or after the rebuttal, that's up to him.
Let's try that to you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Gentlemen, if you would please.
I warned you.
And once again, Alan, we'll reserve you for later, and then when you're done, also we'll do the same thing later on in the meeting. I think this is important for the staff report at this time.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for having us here to give you information on the project. My name is Fred Banfield. I'm with KBA Engineers. We're the reviewing engineer for the city. And I have with me also Curtis Rowe with Kimley Horn. He's a traffic engineer that aided in the review of the project. Our review, I guess, maybe had two focuses. One was to review the traffic study and see if it was in compliance with the city code. And the traffic study was performed in accordance with the city code. Everything that we would want to see in the study was provided. It was based on accepted methodologies and things like that. So as far as the traffic study goes, we had no concerns. The items that we did have concerns with was the overall density of the project and the impact on the road system. Some of the items Alan had mentioned previously, and I guess maybe just to give you a short summary of that. There were 4 of the roads that would have a change in roadway classification. Alan mentioned that, but as an example, Soda Creek would go from a local road to a major collector, and that's a pretty big change. Just to give you an idea of the volumes on that, the current zoning and subdivision for the number of units would have about 426 trips per day on that road. With the proposed rezoning, that would increase to 2,031 trips. So you can see that it's a very large increase on Soda Creek Road, which currently is a low volume road that has limited right of way, limited road width. It goes through the Hot Springs area. So there are quite a few areas that we saw conflict with. The road improvements that would be required with the change in classification. There's a road width requirement for a lane to be 12 feet. So if you had a 2-lane road, you need a 24-foot total width road. In addition to that, when you get to a major collector, you have a clear zone that's required adjacent to the road, and then you also have minimum right-of-way requirements. One of the problems that we saw is in most of these areas, there's not physically room to do those improvements without, a lot of retaining walls and a lot of construction. So that was one issue. And then also the right-of-way in most of those locations is not available. One of the other concerns that we had in the traffic study, they had noted that most of the access would try to be directed to the South Pine Slope Road. One of the concerns we have is how that would occur. When you drive up that road and get access to the site, it's a rather long and a rather narrow road. The easiest way to get up there is to go through North Pine Slope. It's much quicker, it cuts off the time, and that's one thing that we had concern with is, how would you sign that and how would you make it to lower the impact on North Pine Slope Road. A couple of the other things, there were 2 turn lane improvements that were recommended down on Minor Street. And again, one of the turn lanes would need to be in place without development, but the other turn lane was caused by the development. So with the limited room for physical improvements on Minor Street and also the limited right-of-way, we had concerns with how those improvements would be constructed. And then just generally the impact of Soda Creek Road. Again, being a low volume road now, as you go past the hot springs, you have cars that are backing out from the parking, you have pedestrian crossings, and there's the possibility for a lot of conflicts in that area. So that's a brief summary. I could get into more of the numbers, more of the details, but generally, it's probably nothing that couldn't be done with expense and with getting the proper right-of-way and construction, but there just seemed to be a lot of items that would need to be explained to see how it was going to be done to get all the improvements in place. And I can answer any questions if you have.
I just have one. Can you name a major collector road, just so somebody could understand what that looks like versus Soda Creek?
And I would have to look. I think Colorado might be a major, but I would have to look.
What about one in like Denver or something like that we might all know the name of?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. One can't come to mind. I can sit down, and if I can come up with one, I can let you know.
Sure.
But just.
I like Colorado border because you have the turn lanes that they have to put in.
Yeah.
And they have turn lanes.
And again, a major collector, that can be different degrees of a major collector. And I think that would be.
Well, generally those roads don't turn into dirt roads, is what I'm saying.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, a question I had too, and believe it or not, I read every word on every one of these pages. I noticed in your report that at full build out and full occupancy, and Minor Street and Soda Creek becoming major collectors, that in the future, like 20 years out, it could require a stoplight at Soda Creek and Minor Street.
Correct.
So everybody that's it. So that's how big we're talking here, that it could require a stoplight. I saw that in your staff report.
And just again as reference to kind of give you some, maybe a better reference to the number and the number of strips. We're looking at 2,031 vehicles per day with the proposed rezone. Currently, with the subdivision as it is approved, that would be 426 vehicles per day. The current traffic on that road is about 1 vehicle per minute. With the development, that would wind up being about 1 vehicle per 13 seconds. So that gives you a little bit better idea as opposed to just throwing out a number. So that was our major concern.
Thank you. Any other questions? I would ask you that when I have Alan, that we can reserve your comment for later after the applicant's testimony, please. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Okay, now at this time we'll turn the public hearing over to the applicant. I ask that whoever's speaking, please come up to the podium like we have been doing so far. And this for the record, introduce yourself, of course, by name.
My partner here will take care of moving the slides. I hope that's okay. All right. I'm Kevin O'Malley. This is Nancy Jo O'Malley, and we are. I am the managing member of Soda Creek Highlands Development Company, and we're here to talk about the development obviously the development that we are proposing. But first, I want to tell you folks and everyone that we are so glad to be at the point where we can get feedback from the decision makers to give us a little better idea of what might be acceptable, what might not be acceptable. And because of, and I am as familiar with the rules and how these public processes work as probably, and it is critically important that the laws and the rules be followed. The laws and rules basically say that we can't talk to these folks or anybody on the city council, including the mayor, about anything of substance until we are in this room. And I can guarantee you, no matter what you may have heard, that there have been no conversations that violate those rules and regulations. So I just want to make that clear starting out. And we do have some questions, I guess, about Alan's staff report, and we'll get into those and go through our presentation. As I said, Nancy Jo and I kind of lead this. Our company is made up almost exclusively through Clear Creek County residents or our families. So this is very much a local effort. Jeff Sanmartoni, another long-term Clear Creek resident, is our project manager, owner's representative, and a member of the ownership group. And we're very glad to have him on board. This whole thing came about because of my experience dealing with county issues over the past 20 years. And one common thing that has been out there with the school district, with county agencies, city agencies, and other folks is the lack of availability of good quality housing. It's one of the biggest impediments to keeping a community vital and vibrant. There have been many studies done. The latest one done in 2018 confirms lack of attainable housing combined with the aging population that we have makes Clear Creek County unable to meet the needs of employees and current businesses and discourages new businesses from locating. Over time, aging in place, I want to make something very clear. I am one of the old people. So this is, it is nothing other than stating facts. And I, and all of you who might be of a certain age, have earned the right to age in place. We've earned that. And we have the right to do it. So I'm not saying anything negative at all about age. I'm there. But the next couple slides are going to show you what's happened because of our lack of housing. In 1990, the median age here was 36.2. In Colorado, it was 32.7. You see on those graphs, the baby boomers, those colors are by generation. Purple is the baby boomers. That is by far the largest group. If you go to 2018, the baby boomers remain the largest group. And you see a very relatively low amount of population in people between the age of 5 and 35. Basically, school-age children and young parents. Our median age has grown almost 11 and a half years, which is 30%. That's a big difference. And Colorado's has only grown probably about 10%. Next slide, please. These graphs show Clear Creek in 1990 and Colorado in 1990. It was relatively similar, although we had more of us baby boomers even then. If you go to 2018, we are still the largest group in this county. We don't have school-age kids, which is why our school district has 700 students rather than 1,450 it had in 2000. But if you see the comparison, millennials and post-millennials in Colorado are the largest demographic groups. In Clear Creek County, except for people over about 70, they are the smallest groups. And that is why we have a lack of students in the schools, and why we, in some ways, you could make an argument that we have a lack of vitality and vibrance in the community, because when we moved here, many of us in the 70s through the early 90s, everyone was our age. Well, everyone is still our age. And I don't believe that that is good for the long-term health of the community. The history of the property, as Alan talked about, it was annexed in 79. It was subdivided twice, once into 48 lots, once into 45 lots. Neither of those were developed, and we purchased the land in 2018. And as we get further into this, that timing is important based on one of the things Alan said. We can seriously consider purchasing this property until after you folks had redone your comprehensive plan. And many of you, if not all of you, were on the planning commission at that time. And I don't know how good your memory is, but you will have no memory of me or anyone who was involved in our project coming in front of you and discussing whether it would be good or bad to change your comprehensive. because I've always felt in my time in public service that it was a little disingenuous for someone who might benefit from a change in the rules to really advocate for it. And so we chose to be silent during that time period, allow the city to do whatever they thought was best for the city, and then make a choice about whether we wanted to do this. Now, Alan talked about the difference, or what may be a little confusing about who owns what little segment of the property. What he didn't mention is when we submitted our proposal, we said that whoever it turns out owns the property, if we own that 2 acres or whatever it is, if it turns out we own it, we're going to give it to the city. So it's really irrelevant to the process. There is no building that's going to be done on it, and in our final development plan, if it turns out we do own it, we will transfer title to the city. So it's kind of immaterial. What we have proposed is 3 buildings that are 110 by 80, the building pads which are shown on the development proposal. There's 3 of those. There's 6 150 by 50 foot buildings. And then there are 17 townhome buildings that are 6 units, 1 townhome building is 4 units, and 1 community building. And this is important because Alan brought up a number of times that the height limitation. The reason the height limitation was quoted in our submission is that we are basing our plan development on what is was it rural multifamily, and in that category there is a 45-foot height limit. Now, all of these townhome buildings are 2 stories over a garage. In many cases, the back end of the garage will be buried. So, in the way that height is figured out is kind of the average of the front and the back. But in any case, a garage in 2 stories, even if you measure it from the base, is no more than 35 feet. Just as the condominium buildings are for 18 units, they would be 3 stories above a parking garage. But that's one of the reasons we want to talk to you folks, because if that is an issue, if the height of those buildings, what we did when we revamped and resubmitted this proposal, it would be nice if we could be up on the property and show it to you, but the front of the property before the existing roads, for anybody who's been up there, there's about 120 to 200 feet of property below that road that is a driveway that we own. In the initial proposal, there were buildings in that segment. In this proposal, there are not. They have been removed. That's part of the way we were able to bring down the total number of units and also make what you can see from here very much less impactful, and also what you can see from up there, make it less impactful. Alan talked about 2 of the building pads that might be close to the neighbors to Pine Slope. We can commit right now to making sure those buildings are no more than 2 stories. Because if you look at our plan, the townhome buildings, the building pads for the 6-unit townhome buildings are the same size as the building pads for what is talked about here is 18 units in a 3-story building. If it was important, we could move, switch them so that the buildings that are closer to Pine Slope are townhomes, if that's what folks want. Another reason why we're doing a PD instead of just a rezoning is because, and Alan brought this up, he said, you know, builders or developers, sometimes they go through the process and then they turn around and sell. Now that is not our intent. But what is our intent is to make sure that whatever commitments we make, whatever works for you folks, if anybody, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow and someone else comes in to do this, they have to live up to the commitments that we make. Because that's what's in the development plan. The only way we could not do that is if they went through the whole process again and tried to amend the plan. So anyway, next slide. Issues that Ellen raised is, you know, we asked this question, is the density proposed offsetting the infrastructure costs, or is the density driving infrastructure costs? And the answer is neither. If you build 45 homes there, you have to build the same infrastructure. If you build 1,000 units up there, you build the same infrastructure. There is no difference. So, I didn't really understand that question. Staff report states the neighborhood supports 3.2 units per acre and says that we're 6 times that. Well, in the 42.04 acres that I use is what's on my card from the assessor. The county assessor says our parcel is 42.04 acres. We will figure out what it really is. But at 42.4, we would have, in 262 units, we would have 6.3 units per acre. The current Pine Slope neighborhood has 3.2 units per acre. So it is denser, it is more dense, no question, but it's a little less than twice as dense rather than 6 times as dense. And what we're proposing is going to leave a whole lot of open space left. We'll get to that a little later. Alan, you know, made the argument that this is not infill development. That's purely subjective. The property is readily accessible to the infrastructure currently exists in Idaho Springs. The sewer line is not far, the water line is almost adjacent to our property. So it's readily accessible to the infrastructure. And we also believe that this question had to be addressed both in 1979 and in 2006, although I don't seem to be able to find any documentation of those processes. The height of the proposed buildings, we have addressed that. We don't need to have 45-foot buildings. Most of them will definitely be no higher than 35 feet. And if it came down to it, we could find a way to make all of it 35 feet, which is the height restriction, I believe, in every zoning district the city has. I mean, it's the minimum. There are no zoning districts with a low height restriction. There are. Next one. The housing element of the comp plan, obviously, to maintain a diverse and affordable stock, we clearly meet that objective. Ellen had some concerns about the cost to people who buy the units. And so this is an analysis of what those costs would be, and hopefully you can see that. What it comes down to is, and it includes a 35 mil special district levy. And while this special district does have the right to go to 50 mils, I think that would be outrageous, to be honest with you. No one here should have a mill levy that would be almost 120 mils. I have no intention, we have no intention of doing that. We followed the advice of our attorneys, and they said everybody asked for at least 50. So we said, okay. 35 would allow us to bond for about half the cost of the infrastructure. And that's what our intention is. We would pay all of it up front, and then the owners of the homes would over time end up paying off half of it. Anyway, if you look, most important thing, I think, is in the second grouping and all the way on the right, the income levels that people would need to qualify for loans at 95% of the purchase price to be able to buy. And those interest rates are based on a 4.0 interest rate. The current interest rate as of yesterday for FHA loans is 3.25. So if this happened now, these numbers would be less. But I don't want to claim that because I don't know what it's going to be like a year or two down the road. Anyway, to qualify for a one bedroom, you need a $41,000 income. To qualify for 2 bedrooms, it's 59. 2 people, each making $30,000 a year, could purchase that. The townhomes are a little more expensive, and therefore the income levels are higher at 71 and 79,000. But the reality is, nowhere in this state is someone going to be able to build new housing, quality housing, that people who make less than $40,000 a year could afford to buy. It just doesn't exist in Colorado yet. The transportation element, this is an issue, and it's one we'll have to deal with, but the biggest thing that I took out of what our traffic engineer said is that Minor Street currently should have I think it's a left turn lane. Minor Street was just redone. I'm not sure why it doesn't have a left turn lane. But whatever the issue is with traffic and the roads, we're a willing participant in financially helping absorb the cost of whatever it takes to make those roads acceptable to the city. And that's the only commitment I think I can make right now. And hopefully that's acceptable. But there are changes required whether we build out or not. Prevent or mitigate construction on slopes greater than 30%. If we don't come back here with studies done by geotechnical engineers that say this can be built, it won't be built. Just, they're not going to let us. Nobody will let us. So the land is steep, but it's no steeper than much of the land around. Whether there have been material changes in the character of the neighborhood, we believe that identifying, as you did, our property, and it wasn't our property at the time, but the property we subsequently bought is potentially a target for multifamily housing. And when the city is made clear, and the county is made clear that housing is one of the critical issues that faces our community, I think that's a material change. You pointed it out. So, go ahead. Whether we will tend to preserve and promote property values in the neighborhood. I'm sorry, Alan, but I've been in the real estate business for a long time. And I am 100% sure that I am better at analyzing what values are. Okay. Whether the development of the property is in accordance with proposed rezoning will be in harmony and compatible. Consolidation of the housing units with fewer buildings reduces the overall impact to the land and dramatically reduces the number of trees that would need to be cut down to meet fire mitigation regulations. Just trying to figure it out, it's about 7 acres difference between having 6,000 square foot lots and having the buildings that we propose. Our proposed building size total 208,800 square feet. This is roughly 12% of the total land. If you build a small home, you're going to have probably, and Mr. Lambert, you could address this, but probably your first floor is going to be at least 1,000 square feet. You're going to have a 500 square foot garage. And so you're going to have a 1,500 square foot footprint. That's 25% of every one of those units. Where what we're talking about is 12%. So consolidation in fewer buildings reduces impacts and preserves much more of the property in its natural state. That's our goal. Will it affect traffic congestion? It will. There's no way around it. We will do whatever is reasonable for us to do to help. It's not going to really affect the traffic on our property. It will have minimal impact, I believe, with the improvements that would be made to Pine Slope, but it will affect other roads that we don't control. All we can do is offer to help in whatever way we can to mitigate those issues. Okay? Whether the proposed rezoning will promote the public welfare, we showed you projected sale prices and the affordability of the units. And the fact Alan mentioned, we are restricting sizes, and those restrictions are also based on building pad sizes. And when you add the size of the building pads with the height restrictions, especially if we go to 2 levels, you can't build that much livable space, but by having those units as 660-foot, 1-bedroom units, our projected price ends up being about $280 to $285 a square foot. The average price of a home sold in Idaho Springs, and they're not new homes, they're all the homes, on a per square foot basis, it's about $235. So, because these are new, we will be able to be at a little higher level. But we couldn't sell those at, in Breckenridge, that same price is about $400 a square foot. In Denver, it's about $265. Here, it's $235, and the market does dictate we can't sell something for more than the market will bear. And so those prices, based on the sizes, are very close to what they're going to sell. Okay? Would it cause us undue hardship? We respectfully disagree with staff's contention that it does not cause us that. We're just following along what it appeared that the city was advocating, that there is a need for housing of this type in these price ranges, and that's what we're trying to do. And I certainly understand whether, how this affects people on Tunstall. And, I wish there was a piece of land that was away from anyone's houses. But the reality is, if there was a piece of land that was away from anyone's houses, it would also be away from water lines and sewer lines. That's just kind of how it works. So others are going to decide whether this is a hardship on us, and we leave it up to those folks to make that. Oh, what Nancy Joe is pointing out, if we built 45 single-family homes in order to be able to justify the infrastructure, which is basically the same, that's what it's going to cost to get up to that property, put the sewer lines in and water lines. You would have to sell those houses. If you built 130 homes to 140, you could sell them at $600,000. If you built 40 of them, you would have to sell them at about $1.5 million. I have no desire to build houses in any of that range, but that's what would have to be done. And it certainly wouldn't solve the issue of attainable workforce housing. So, thank you for your time and your consideration, and now we will happily listen to what people have to say.
Mr. Chairman, vote please. We're going to keep you up. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. I ask everyone out there, and ourselves included, we don't discuss this amongst each other. We're just going to take a break, get back up here, and continue on with Kevin, you'll still have the floor, please.
So I can get a drink of water?
Exactly.
What teacher wants to be able to right in front of his child? And what police officer wants to be able to say right in front of the brother and in large numbers, that's what is perceived. Basically, I get skied on the streets all my life. And of course, I missed that. And so I'm trying to get the strength back in my legs from the operation. I took the rest of the trip here. The windshield was crazy. And I found the last one, and he said, "You're doing fine, except just easy." And the food on that was it was the same balance, the same way the car would turn. So I said, okay, I'm doing this no problem without bothering to do this. Oh yeah. If your sheets aren't feeling it, you need to mention me. So I spent about a year. Go skiing. I got a few hours. About the ski for an hour. Just the atmosphere yesterday was so good. I'm getting there. They felt a little more data to make their own decisions. Basically says they don't. I signed up I just get information and no registration. And I can do this. Those are running. I know it pretty well.
I've got better many years ago, and like dagger. And I'm like, what's that for? Oh, I can never know. Scare stuff off. And all I get pictures around the never down.
That's okay, I see.
Thanks everyone for cooperating with that break. So far in the meeting, thanks for everyone in the audience for being quiet and not interjecting anything. Let's continue that way. The applicant, Kevin, the floor is still yours.
Starting up again.
I've been reminded to say one thing. If, if the average household size, which is about 2.3 or 2.4, so in 260 units, it would be 520 people. I think we could reasonably expect that up to 100 of those might be school-age kids. And 100 kids, the state backfill now is $9,100 per student. The way that funding works, once you get to a certain level and a certain number of students, the state backfills. And Clear Creek, even with the reduced student population, is at that level. So every new student would bring $9,100 to the school. So 100 new students would be 910,000, which would be helpful. That's the end. We thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Okay, does the commission have any questions for the applicant?
I did, and I apologize because I don't know entirely where your parcel meets the 103 side.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Is there any property on that side that is possible to buy so that you could have access from 103?
I've not investigated that. I don't believe so. I think the zip lines are over there. I think that property is owned by a commercial venture, and So we.
I was just curious if there was another access point. The city property up top on Sunnyside also has property that's inaccessible for parks use, so we understand that problem.
Anyone else? Okay, like I told Alan and the traffic engineers, we reserve comment from you later on before we close the public hearing to answer questions you may want to respond to. We'll reserve your time for that too, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, before I go to public comment, Alan, for the record, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point?
I have nothing to add.
Okay, once again, we reserve you for the end before we close the public hearing. Okay, at this point, we'll open the public comment on the hearing. Once again, everyone is required to be 3 minutes or less. If you are running over, you can defer the remainder of 1 for your comment. Does anybody have any questions on that? Diane, our city clerk, and our secretary also will be our timer. When the buzzer goes off, please be done. If we don't, we're going to be here till tomorrow night at this time.
Can you clarify that for me? When you say, so if somebody speaks, can I give them my time if they run out?
No. What happens if the person speaking runs over, it takes somebody else's time, that person's off the list, and they're not allowed to speak with an additional 3 more minutes. Did I clarify that?
No.
Sure. That's why we have council here.
So, what Sharon is saying that if you are going over the 3 minutes, someone else can call out that they defer their 3 minutes to that person. But we're only doing that once, so max of 6 minutes. And then that person who gave them their time is giving up their ability to speak.
Oh, of course, that's right.
But only once, not
every
so
time.
So they can't speak for 9 minutes.
No, correct. Yeah, 9, 12.
But then could another person defer their time to another person?
Yes.
A different person?
Yeah.
Right. So that process could be
Yes.
we either use or give up 3 minutes.
You call that name.
She'll keep me in mind. Okay, so I'm just going to go down. I'm not going to just pull names off this. I'm going to go down the list as you had signed in. Do we want to have them come up to the podium or
Yes.
what? Do you want to?
Yes.
That'll take us a longer time.
Yeah.
Maybe you could call like 3 names at once or something so people can line up so we don't
Can it
have
be
to.
Sure, I can do that.
One ahead or something, just call them one ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody to come to the podium. I know your name and address is on here, but for the record, I'd like you to pronounce your name and your residential address, not your P.O. box number and all that. So the first one is going to be Chris Malenka. Second will be Margie Marlin. The next one after that will be Laura Wilson. So just Margie, you'll be next. Be ready to go as soon as he's done, just to move this along.
Come up with them right away.
There's plenty of room back there in the corner to stand up and everything, so we're kind of ready.
Ready? My name is Christian Malenka. I live at 1900 Minor Street. I will ask you to acknowledge the fact that I'm a resident of the town. I'm not simply an employee. I think the notion of workforce housing is very noble, but the question we have to ask ourselves, whose workforce? Our workforce is paid relatively legal but relatively low wages, and I find it difficult to believe that any of them are going to be able to afford to live in this housing. So given that, it is a noble cause, but I think a lot of it also has to do with location and timing. I think this project is way too big. I'm not going to repeat all of Alan's statements, but the project is much too large for the area and the impacts it's most likely to have on the folks below. We're very quick to think about the benefits and the quality of the life of the potential consumer. but we really haven't had an open discussion about how it's going to impact the 1,800 people that live at the bottom of the hill. Those of you who know where 1900 Minor is, I'm at ground zero. And Minor, and I'm not saying that because I have a beef with Mr. O'Malley's proposal, but the reality is I am probably the best eyewitness of what goes on there. So a couple of things that I would like to bring up. Mr. O'Malley's own engineering firm, McDowell Engineering, they cited that the actual number of traffic is going to be 2,591 per day, and not the 2,031 that our engineers projected. But another thing that's not factored in is you have Google. If there's a traffic jam, the occasional traffic jam out here on 70, Google tells you to come down 74 to Two Bears Road. And that happens increasingly more and more all the time. So the truth of the matter is that I think there has to be greater consideration into the traffic plan, and quite frankly, taking people's property and widening a road for one interest is really not to the benefit of the community. I would like to bring something up. There never should be a turn lane there. It's the speed limits on Soda Creek and Minor are 15 miles an hour. There never should have been a turn lane there. So in regard to the developers, engineers, I would dispute that with them. It's a bad precedent, because if we allow this type of density up there, this is not the only private property in or near town. So I think it potentially can be a very bad precedent to allow such density, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We don't have the jobs in the county, so they're not working here. People that would live here would predominantly. Oh, thank you.
I'm Margie Marlin, 633 Pine Slope Road. I am just a citizen here. I am a citizen. I'm not just a citizen. I have several concerns. I'm going to try to get them really fast. My first concern is the fiscal impact on the development in the community. It has a cost of its own that kind of gets buried underneath things. And with the help of my significant other, who used to be an auditor for the city of Arvada, he and I calculated a cost per door of $2,750. And when you add this kind of density, we the citizens are paying for his profits. And so I think in that case that the citizens get to have some say in where we want to have houses or density built. And I do not believe that the focal point of our town is one of the places that we want to pay that kind of money. And I agree, we need housing, affordable housing for people who work here. We want to take care of our own work community. I don't think that that's going to be the affordable housing. And one of my points right here in my paper is that, hey, I'm one of those teachers you're talking about there. I've worked here in this county for 34 years. Our district doesn't pay a lot. It's not a surprise, I'm sure. We're a small district. However, I continue to work with this district because it's a part of my community. They're advertising these houses for 180 to 350,000. You had different figures. I looked online. I also have my data. You have a spreadsheet here that shows how I figured out what the cost was. I put 300 houses. I see that you've changed that, so it's a little bit off. However, it's not going to change the numbers significantly as we played around with it to see how the numbers would go. However, I want to go back. I took out a 30-year loan for $150,000 for my little house up there on Pine Slope at a 3.7% interest. The monthly payment is about half my paycheck, and when you include the taxes and the insurance. With these costs, you would consider me debt burdened. Add the cost of living at 8% tax on everything I purchase here in this county to make sure that we have the services that we need, and the increases on water and sewer. Hey, you could find me, quite frankly, over my head. I should probably be looking for employment in Jefferson County. But there's something I find about this community that makes it worth the strife to meet what I need to meet to stay here. And that is that right outside my back door, you can call me a NIMBY. It's not a NIMBY. It's called In My Backyard. And I just want to finish really quickly with what is in my backyard. There's wide open spaces. And it doesn't just have to be your land, Mr. O'Malley, it's all over. But your land just happens to be a focal point for this entire community. There's nature abounding. The bobcats, the mountain lions, the bear, the deer, they're all coming down off your property into town. Thank you very much. The air is fresh. It's filled with bird song. It's not filled with cars zooming by all day long. And the night sky is open to a heaven full of stars. And I don't think that at the cost it's going to cost me to help you do your dream. And I'm sorry that you got caught up in this mix with having a dream that may or may not come to fruition. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be the one that's going to be able to stop that. But I think that I should have some say. And I just want to say in the comprehensive plan, they mentioned we have a vision. The Idaho Springs is dedicated to preserving its culture as a historic mining community, ensuring the quality of life and the economic future through both preservation and responsible development. And then it goes on to talk about transportation and whatnot, but it also says that you guys are going to protect us by implementing wise use of the community and the natural resources. And I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like one of our largest natural resources is the beauty that we live in. And I think we pay a high price for that, and we're willing to pay that high price. And I would hate to see something like that area go to high density. If you need to build some houses up there, even if they're $1 million homes, Mr. O'Malley, have at it. But I just can't see this project going like that. So thank you very much for your time. There's more in the letter. Please read it, and thank you.
If it's okay, just to save time, we cannot have applause. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Laura Wilson. I live at 555 Soda Creek Road. You guys talk about the Pine Slope and how it's going to affect Pine Slope, but no one talks about how it's going to affect Soda Creek. And I happen to live at a spot where I'm going to get hit both ways. My property goes up across Pine Slope. So not only I'm on the southern end, so that southern extension as you come down, it's going to hit me, so all the cars are going to come down, pass me this way, down, and pass me in the front. Okay? So now I'm looking at, now we only have 400 cars on Soda Creek Road, but up to 2,000, and more than half of that on the backside of me too. It's very disconcerting. You also talk about right-of-ways. If you're going to expand the road, you're expanding both Soda Creek and Pine Slope. Again, I will be hit on both sides. Okay, you also talked about when you sent all the notification out that everybody within 300 feet of the property was going to be notified. I was never notified. I never got notification of this hearing. And this development ends right at my property. We are touching. And I never got notification.
What's your address?
555 Soda Creek Road. We go up across Pine Slope. We're a little over the 2 months.
Well, are you within 200 feet of the actual parcel?
Yeah. Our property line touches the parcel, according to your maps. So that has me concerned. That and traffic. You know, I'm all for development. My next question is, how can we guarantee that something like this will benefit the people of our county? Is there a way we can guarantee that county residents can get first choice? Is there a guarantee that you have to have so much income or make under so much income to be guaranteed to live in one of these homes? They've done it in Florida. My sister just moved into a place in Florida that she had to live in her county for 5 years before she was eligible to move into this new development. And that's something to consider. That's something to guarantee that makes sure that this stays within our county. It's not all the homes. It was a fraction of the homes, but it's still a guarantee that this will not become a bedroom community. That condos for the ski community are quick, easy access and everything else. So that's all basically I have to say, is that there is a huge impact to me personally, but yet I'm for development. whether or not it's as high intensity or not, considering your southern road is right near my property and everything else. So, thank you.
Thank you.
What's your name? Laura Wilson?
And I'm sorry, I didn't read the next names out. The next one up is Sonia Lindeman. There's Nancy Spetzler, Candy Luco, Judy Murphy, and Jim White are the next order. Sorry about not bringing that up.
My name is Sonia Lindeman. I live at 626 Pine Summit Road. I have a story that I'd like to read to you. I want to tell you a little story. Imagine for a moment that you are a homeowner in a friendly small town in the Colorado mountains. Your little town has a wonderful hometown feeling, where neighbors know and help each other. A few people from other areas of the county move into this little county town because they too love the easy, friendly, small town with such beautiful views and gentle people. And as so often happens after some time has passed, the well-meaning newcomers start talking about developing some of the beautiful spots on the edges of the small town. After all, everyone knows a town has to grow or it will die. Before too long, there are developers bringing ideas and plans to the small town. Plans that will increase the population of the friendly small town by 30 to 40% or more. To some in the small town, this seems like it might be a great idea. Attainable homes for workers in the small town, or maybe draw our graduating seniors back home after their long stint at college. But from here, this is where the story can take two different roads. Scenario number one. The developer, in order to make a nice profit, uses a method called a metropolitan district to borrow money in order to build the infrastructure for his development and have the new home buyers taxed at a high rate to repay the borrowed money. This all sounds wonderful. If all the homes are sold and all the new home buyers are paying the bill, what harm can there be to the small town? These home prices are minimally $200,000 plus taxes, insurance, and the extra $3,000 or more per year to pay for the metropolitan district loan. Can a minimum wage earner, wait person, or even teacher afford these monthly payments? Number one, since the new development is not proposed close to the major highway exchange or trails and walkways into town, this development will put so many new automobiles on the small town streets that there will be gridlock at least twice daily as the people from the new development go off to work in other towns, and when they come back in the evening, not to mention additional parking in the downtown area necessary for the new residents to enjoy the many fine restaurants and shops in the small town. Number two, all of the small town residents will be paying to have a parking structure built in the small town at a cost of several $1 million.
You can have one time.
There's more. Also, the developer's own traffic studies stated turn lanes are necessary at two intersections where there is no room to create these turn lanes. Even though the new development is borrowing money to build the infrastructure, the small town will be responsible for snow removal, street and sidewalk repair. Number five, the local grocery store is having trouble trying to service all the new families in the small town, since there is no way for them to increase the size of the store or the parking lot. They decided to close the small town store and build a larger store in a neighboring community where there is vacant land large enough to accommodate their increased size, thus taking a large amount of sales tax revenue from the friendly small town to the new community. Many studies have shown that new residential developments actually cost the small town in excess of $2,440 per house per year over and above the increased property and sales tax they bring in. Now, all the residents of the small town will see an increase in their real estate taxes to pay for this deficit. That's minimally $840,000 per year to cover the proposed 264 proposed units. Who will pay for this? Oh, the shortfall, all of the residents? And this is the best case scenario. But now the friendly town has turned into the larger community, just like the one the newcomers came from. It is no longer the friendly small town that everyone wanted to live. Scenario number 2. Now what happens if, for some reason, the development fails? What happens if only part of the new homes are sold? Are the few homeowners in the new development forced to pay off the loans that the Metropolitan District generated at up to 18% interest? Is the developer responsible? What happens if the developer declares bankruptcy? If the homeowners are responsible, will house payment be so high that the homes are no longer attainable and the new homeowners are forced to sell or be faced with foreclosure? Will the development go bankrupt? Will it just be a collection of a few vacant homes on abandoned streets? Will the small town be forced to repay the Metropolitan District loans? This is what is happening to towns in this state that have had bad experiences with the Metropolitan District. There will certainly be the new roads, the new streets, water lines, waste lines to be maintained by the small town, or will they be abandoned? Will the ugliness of the abandoned development be an eyesore?
Oh, this is not related.
Yes, sir.
I want to mention real quick, I think this is worth bringing up, Laura Wilson.
Yeah.
So, and I can't even want to hear this. So there was a notice, so when we send notice, what we do is we run a query on the county website, a buffer of 300 feet, and then automatically creates a mailing list that we send out. So you would send a notice, but the notice was sent to 555 Cedar Creek Road. It doesn't have a PO box listed. So Kim, who's our GIS person, you're gonna raise your hand, Kim. Well, you're gonna want to meet with her, and so that they can update this in the GIS, so that whenever there's a notification that goes out, it's sent to your PO box and not to your physical
That
address.
is our address. That's my mailing address.
So there was a letter then that was sent, so the mailing list has your address listed on it. So I don't know why the letter didn't get sent, but it did get mailed.
Hang on just a second, please, thank you. Candy, did you give up your?
She did.
You did, okay, the last one. Dan, what's that? Nancy Spencer
Yeah, I don't have anything.
and Judy Murphy. So we're gonna be Jim White and Sid Hanks after that.
Judy Murphy, I live at 639 Pine Slope, and I'm going to continue Sonia's story. Will the small town be forced to bigger? Has the local grocery store already moved to the new community? Is the multi-million-dollar parking structure under construction? One other small point no one seems to care much about. If you look at the history of the hot springs, this proposed development is on land that was no doubt camped on by the Ute and Arapaho Indians during their annual meeting powwow at the hot springs. Of course, this is the worst case scenario, but could it happen? You bet it could. So what would be the best for the friendly small town? Maybe slower, more responsible residential growth built on infilled vacant lots located in current streets with less expensive access to water and wastewater lines. Street, water lines, and wastewater lines that are already being maintained, not steep, unattainable, virgin, wildlife inhabited, inaccessible, historic land. 2, maybe growth more attuned to the county-wide plan that says the entire county engulfing the friendly small town should grow by 30 new homes over the next 10 years, not 265 in the next 5 years. Maybe balanced growth beginning by attracting industrial or media employers who pay more than minimum wage and pay more in property tax than residential units. We have the right to restrict developments that are detrimental to our community. in any way, including socially, environmentally, visually, loss of wildlife and nature, or historic areas, any reason that is not an enhancement to our friendly small mountain town? Or is it okay to continue increasing traffic, increasing cost of city services for every citizen, increasing our air pollution, increasing loss of habitat in wild areas, and allowing developments that bring no benefit to our friendly small mountain town? I personally believe that our small, beautiful, friendly town needs to grow better, not bigger. Thank you.
Jim White.
Okay, I'm Jim White. I'm chairman of SOL, the county-wide organization, including Idaho Springs. And over the years, SOL has studied many aspects of land use, and so we have additional information to bring to decision makers like yourselves. One of the topics we have researched is fiscal impact. And you heard earlier a couple references to a fiscal impact. I think the most astute study, and it was quite astutely done, was the analysis that the costs of supporting a new house exceed the revenue that you get from that new house by about $2,750 a year. So 264 houses would be in the range of about $750,000 into the budget. Actually, there's a researcher in Colorado Springs, Dr. Robert Powell, who says that new development costs more per house, or presents a bigger deficit per house than existing, just because it involves change in upheaval in the city. The national average is that the cost to support a new house exceeds the revenue from that house by a factor of about 1.5. Normally, for every dollar revenue you get, it costs $1.50 for the support costs. We see this all across the country, with the exception of Colorado. Colorado has the Gallagher Amendment, which reduces the amount of revenue coming from residential, and so the impact is bigger in Colorado. I've got the data for the whole county, which is the cost to support a house is 2.5 to 3 times the revenue you get from the house, and that comes to something closer to $5,000. It's almost $5,000 per year per house deficit to the budget to support the residents. Residential development has this characteristic anywhere in the country you go. Are there any exceptions to this? Well, rarely, but occasionally. I think if there's something structurally different about development, a normal development, it can be. I think the best example here is Belmar, down in Lakewood. Basically, it was a real mess. Lots of police work, drug dealing, all kinds of costs to the city, and the city is far better off for having it developed the way it is than it was before. But this is the exception that proves the rule. The application here tonight doesn't have these exceptions. There's some discussion whether it's infill or not. I don't think it is.
I'll get the rest
Okay. I don't think it fits the classic definition of infill, and it certainly isn't a problem area. In fact, there are several factors of this development that would tend more to make it a bigger impact on the budget than average. There's already impacts specifically identified associated with it, like widening roads, traffic issues. The whole plan is a whole lot more complicated than average across the country development. I mean, we're not plopping down houses in neat little rows on a field in Kansas with nice little roads on it. This is a complicated development. And the other thing is, it's a big development. Most of the data that we've collected is for developments that increase the population 1 or 2% or even less. This is talking 30% or more. So the amount of change the city has to go through to absorb this is much bigger than normal. All of these factors tend to make this probably a more impactful project. Thus, for tonight, you have a little bit more decision that you've got to face. Not only do you have a normal decision of whether this is the benefits from this exceed the negative and you really want it, but you've got to decide whether you want this badly enough to be willing to take a hit on the city budget that's at least $700,000 or $800,000 a year, probably more, and maybe a whole lot more. This is the kind of fiscal analysis that goes along with most reservation policies. Thank you.
Real quick, can I ask your name, ma'am?
Kate Axel.
KAX Group.
Got it. Thank you. And after Sid, it'll be.
Just my point something.
Your name is?
Sid Hanks.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. My name is Hank. That's why it's not.
Thank you. After Hank will be Amanda Kowalski, Paul Van Ryzen, excuse me, Marianne Selkirk, and then Michelle Cavavale. Okay, go ahead. After that, you bet. Thank you.
Yeah, I only have a few simple things to say. People were so articulate. I want to thank the people that made such a powerful case against this development. Just a couple things that I would like to mention. One is, I don't think it was said at all tonight that the new clinic is going to go on Soda Creek and Minor Street. So you got another big problem there. When I heard Chris Malanka talk about being ground zero, all of us, of course, are excited. We'll probably be using that clinic. But that's a major issue in terms of traffic right there on that corner too. In terms of, secondly, nobody's mentioned, like, I know it was talked about maybe new students up there, but what about the school buses? Are the school buses going up that kind of slope in the winter? I mean, that's crazy, I think, just crazy to even consider that. We know what the winters are like here, and just on a straight street, let alone a steep one. And same with fire and emergency up there. The steepness is, to me, a very serious concern. Very, very serious concern. And one last thing I just mentioned, I really, really love hot springs. I go over there on a regular basis. And when Chris Malanka mentioned that the speed limit is 15, it really should be 5 miles an hour. People are walking back and forth there continuously with their cell phones, not looking. It's incredibly dangerous, as it is at 15 miles an hour. Unless they put a walkway over or something like that, we're begging for some kind of a serious accident there with that kind of traffic in the hot springs. And I know they put a lot of money into that hot springs to make it a really premier and a beautiful place. A lot of people are there coming out. And I think this would be real damaging. That's all I want to say.
Yes, sir. Paul Van Ryzen. After him would be Marianne Selkirk and Michelle. Michelle's right here. So.
Hey, hi, my name is Paul Van Ryzen. I live at 96 Montaigne. I'm new to the community, so I can offer you maybe perspective that a lot of you have not spoken to. I previously lived in Fairplay in Cedar Lake, Wisconsin, and the things that are similar about that community and this is that there are no stoplights, or maybe one stoplight in town. And that was the reason that we came here. We like that quality, we like the rural nature of that kind of a community. From our house, we can see out onto the development property. It's one of the qualities that we thought was such a great thing about that house. My wife and I are not wealthy by any means. We're public servants as well. We're biologists. We are debt burdened and we're over our head living in that house, but like you also said, we're willing to pay for the amenities of living there. And we really don't want to on a practical level, come down Montaigne and have to wait while a stream of cars go by just to go to town. And I'm also in affordable housing. I own a housing company in Delta, Colorado, and Cedar Ridge. I have 2 apartment buildings there. I think those communities are similar to this community in terms of jobs and compensation and what people can afford. Oops, a little bit popping on my pants. Too much but we can't charge more than $750 for our most expensive unit there. And we sometimes have a hard time finding people that can pay that consistently. So I think the estimates, of people in this community, finding those units is a little bit unrealistic. That's just kind of my perspective from my experience in another community in Colorado. So that was it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that this one? That's the one you gave me? Yeah, the one you gave me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's the picture that he's putting up.
Oh,
That
let's see.
one.
Let's see if it works.
It worked!
Yay!
I'm Mary Ann Selkirk, and I live at 635 Pine Slope. And my husband Chuck here bought our house 50 years ago. We're old timers. And I'm going to look at this from a bit of a historical view. And you have a picture in front of you of a beautiful site without I-70, even without the hot springs hotel built. The old one that was torn down is down there in the corner. You can see the waterfall. You can see the water up above, feeding the waterfall. And you can see Pine Slope Road cutting that steep line up into the area up there. And then it winds back into where we live. So I like to think of Flirtation Peak there as kind of a lady with swirling skirts that look out over Idaho Springs. And the history here, the native tribes sharing the springs is amazing to think about that. George Jackson, when he came over from Bergen Park, described seeing the steam rising from our hot springs. With his dogs, he made his way over to Chicago Creek on the right there and found the first substantial gold discovery in Colorado. In January 1859, he wrote of encounters coming over here with wolverines, mountain lions, sheep, deer. And then our pretty lady there with her skirts watched millions of dollars worth of minerals. And this is unbelievable that I read today. 20,000 people at the peak lived here. How? I don't know. Did they live up there? I don't know. So what does it mean to us today as we consider putting 300 plus units on 39 acres instead of keeping it zoned for Mountain R1? Idaho Springs has a city park at the top of the waterfall. There are trails from that area up there that lead over to Chicago Creek, where the zip wire adventures are, and onto our historic cemetery. There are local ideas that have come before City Council to do a dog park for a little bit of that. There was a huge project presented to City Council 12 years ago maybe to develop an ice climbing park with our waterfall area. It was really well done, but it didn't work out at that time. But if you look at what happened to Uray financially with their ice park, wow. Chuck?
Yes. As a surviving husband, I defer to my wife.
The mining history snakes all around Our Lady there that slopes up for the Flirtation Peak. Chuck found an ox shoe up there in one of the gullies. Judy Murphy's house, 2 doors down from us, was a stagecoach spot in its early days. And all the time I've lived here, I have dramatic memories of mountain lions, a deer skeleton found just on the border of our property that had been dragged up a juniper tree, probably by a mountain lion, I would suppose. Elk, porcupines, raccoons, foxes, coyotes, bears. Last September, I had a wonderful experience. I mean, face to face, 5 feet away from a great horned owl on the waterline. We even one year had escaped peahens that someone was raising in Idaho Springs that made it up there, liked it up there. We had a mysterious marmot that moved into our neighbor across the road. Came from somewhere. The house was empty. So what's going to happen to our animals, small and large, up there that we love? In 1978, the water froze up that fed all the homes on Highlands. And before it thawed, we had old pipes. When it did thaw, it was just fountains of water coming out of the holes of those broken pipes before it all got replaced. We were taking baths down at hot springs and temporary heat-wrapped garden hoses giving us water that the city helped us with. Outside our back door, we've had small springs pop up a couple times. Stability of some of the land up there and implications makes me wonder about how big these retaining walls are going to need to be to control that kind of stuff. Our road, just this last week, at where it turns, you get 3 people that meet on that curve. It is real tricky, to decide who's going to back up where, when. We had our cars parked in front of our house, and some guy got drunk, came down our road, hit one car, moved it, hit the other car, middle of the night, drove off. It's so narrow, with a cliff off the edge. I don't know. It's scary to think of more people driving these roads. Fire engines. In the 80s and 90s, look, these 3 fire trucks just in our houses.
Charles, Selkirk, you're next.
All right. I surrendered. Okay, this end, and Michelle, and that means you're up. You're not gonna speak, okay. Thank you. So then it's Ralph Herring, Mike Lamberti, Sherry Spencer, John McKeer. Next up is Matt.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ralph Herring. I live at 1880 North Spring Gulch Road, just outside the city limits. I own a home up Pine Slope Road at 632 Pine Slope Road. I own it with my son and daughter-in-law. They've been living out there now for a few years, and I talked with them both, and I know that they plan to one day hope to have a family, and with all the traffic that's going to be up there and the changes that the neighborhood is going to overcome, I think is going to possibly cause them to look at a different place to live, maybe even squeezing them out of the area, so possibly pushing them further away from me and my extended family, my wife and our other children, and that wouldn't be good for us. The big thing I see though is what it will do to the area as far as the burden on the sewer system, both down at this treatment plant and right in the neighborhood itself. Right now a sewer line runs through the property that I own with my son, and a spring pops up out of it every now and again, and it's not a natural spring. So if we get more traffic with more sewage running down that same direction, it's going to further cause a problem for my property and people below. As it's been stated before, the impact that this will have on the resources that the city already has to provide, snow plowing and stuff like that, they have a hard time keeping up. They don't have the proper equipment to do it. It's only going to become worse and more of a burden on the city. which will become more of a burden on all those taxpayers in the area as well. And if that is going to be passed on to the current property owners, our taxes are going to go up, the cost of owning a home in the area is going to go up. And I just ask the council to keep that all in mind as they proceed forward looking at this, because as stated previously, the costs could get way out of hand and cause a real financial issue for both the current taxpayers and the city altogether. That's all I really have to say. I didn't prepare anything of great length, but this project and the size of the scope is going to, I think, really cause a problem for the Pine Slope neighborhood and the city in its entirety. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Lamberti. I live at 62 Two Moon Road. And just wanted to say a few things. I've known Kevin O'Malley for 15 years. I've actually done business with him, but I've been to most of these meetings, if not all of them. And for him to get up here and say, we're all local, is something I just don't agree with. In actuality, he's going to come here, he's going to do this development, he'll take what he makes, go back to his house in Evergreen. This development won't affect his life at all, where the rest of us probably can't say that. The other point I wanted to make is 20% of this is supposed to be affordable housing. For this figure, they used the county's median income, they call it, which is actually $69,936 according to the county. The latest figures I could get were the 2018 American Community Survey. But that's the figure they use to qualify people for affordable housing. So I found out from the same page what's the actual income for people in Idaho Springs. It's $47,986, which is a difference of $21,000. So just in case you wonder, we are the poor folks. But in any case, with what the county said, setting up the infrastructure, being a builder myself, these places could come in affordable or not. It all depends on what happens. Blasting, if there's any number of things that could enter into it. The other thing I wanted to identify here is the roads. The Geological Survey, which doesn't have a dog in this hunt, they just come and make their assessments, have identified that whole slope as being unstable. In fact, that's the bold print in their letter, which I read all this stuff, and they made that point. So if you go through making road cuts, home sites, this all contributes to that. My question is, when these are done and people start using, when they cave in or people's houses start sliding down the hill, who's going to be responsible for that? I mean, I'll see it happen in I-70 all the time, that these roads cave in. And that was about the last point I had to make, so thank you for your time.
Now, be John McKee, Alan Bard, and then Renee Weldy. Excuse me if I say this wrong.
That's correct. Renee's no longer present. She had to leave due to emergency.
Renee did. And that'd be Mark Graybell after that. Go ahead, Sherry.
Hi, my name is Sherry Spencer. I live at 773 Soda Creek Road. Last June, my husband was driving on this road. I'm sorry this isn't big enough if I'd known. This is going north on Pine Slope. This is not the northern end, but super steep. It's not the southern end. In fact, this is the flat, good part of the road. In fact, it's particularly one of the wider areas. It's Margie's house is right here, and your house is right there. This curve here is so steep that you really can't even see that it's a curve. My husband is coming this way. Another car is coming this way. It was a little wide. He came around the curve. They're both going maybe about 5 miles an hour. And he had to pull over, but this shoulder's so soft that his truck just went down the side.
This is what his tire looks like. And if he had been going maybe 3 miles faster, he would have rolled his truck. In order to make this road wider and safer, they have to take out my friend Mary Ann's yard, my friend Margie's yard. They have to take out Murphy's yard. Oh, and the Wilsons, that back part of your property, that's gone too. And I'm sorry, that bothers me. What's more, I respect to all of you people who have come up here and been so analytical and done all your research and been so polite, but this is a far more emotional issue for me. Because frankly, I was furious when I heard Mr. O'Malley refer to himself as local. Because when you have an 80439 zip code and you have to get on the highway to come here, you're not local. That's not local. And more than that, I don't see him in the grocery store and at the coffee shop, at all these places. I know you people. I know who you are and I see you all the time. And I hope I'm not embarrassing myself when I admit financially, Mr. Rising, we are way overburdened too. And the one thing we own, our one thing that belongs to us, that is our asset, and the thing we plan to leave our children, is our home. Our little piece of heaven that belongs to us. That is everything we've worked for, everything we have scrapped and saved, and everything we have. And I don't have the luxury of being Mr. O'Malley to buy huge pieces of property and stand here and pretend like this is some kind of philanthropy, because it is not. Let's talk about how much money he wants to make while devaluing my home and everything I have worked for. I was so annoyed standing working out in my yard all summer as the huge construction trucks came by every 3 minutes when they're going up to Blue Valley. And now they're going to be trucking up Soda Creek Road in a car every 13 seconds. And we're going to devalue this thing that I have worked for and I'm so proud of and it means so much to me. And to take away from all of you, and Mr. Rising, who's new and welcome to our community. It's a lovely, lovely place. I quit teaching here a very long time ago, but have made 90-mile round trips to my job and back to continue to live here. Because it is such a wonderful place, full of wonderful people. And I beg you, do not let someone come up here and try and call this charity and philanthropy and community service to build homes that maybe someone with more money will buy and rent to 10 people who are going to live there and work minimum wage part-time jobs. You know, this is not right. This is just wrong. And I want to thank all of you who did research and analysis and hard work, because I didn't do any of that. But I love this place and I love what I do. And we beg you not to let someone come in here and try and profit and make money off of us and pretend he's doing us a service. I'm offended by it. Thank you all very much.
All right, my name is John McKee, and I live at 59 Tuning Road. I'm going to try to be a little less emotional, but I completely know what you're going through, because I'm feeling the same thing. Every morning, my son and my dogs and I walk the water pipe trail right by Mr. O'Malley's vacant lots. It is part of my everyday life. It's part of what I love, and I'm here tonight to argue that this zoning is ridiculous and a terrible idea. A couple things that I've already mentioned, I'll just briefly touch on. The affordable housing thing, I thought it was very charitable for the staff just to say that they were unsure if any affordable housing would come of it. The math would dictate that it's absolutely mathematically impossible for any of these units to be affordable in the terms that we've got. Furthermore, the figures that we've seen so far about the amount this is going to take are way, in my estimation, way less than it will actually cost to build this. As a comparison, there's a development down in the DTC area called the Landmark, very similar in size, 271 units to this one's proposed 264. That one, also the developer couldn't get an investor like this one and had to resort to a metro district. Sold over $30 million of bonds to get the money to build this place, and it is now going bankrupt, sticking it to the people that bought it, the citizens, instead of the developer, took on all of the liability. And at least down there, it's a big city. They can absorb something like that. That will not be the case here. This could very well bankrupt this city if this goes bad. If this goes bad like the housing market about 10 years ago, and all of a sudden this development goes bankrupt and the city is stuck with this huge multi-million-dollar bill and $1 million plus even just for upkeep for this neighborhood, it could bankrupt our little town. We are not big enough to take on this level of a project. It's just too big of a gamble for the citizens of this town and for the city. So, a terrible idea. Plus, as Mr. O'Malley admitted tonight, this is already cheaper than Denver. We are already doing our part for affordable housing here, and he also admitted that no developer, including this development, is currently in a position to be able to create affordable housing in the Front Range anywhere. It's just not possible. So I agree with the financial analysis that needs to be done. I've not seen any numbers that make any sense. The mill levy would be hundreds and hundreds of dollars per household per month, based on the amount this type of a development on the steep hillside would take. That landmark was done on loamy, flat soil, 2 buildings instead of steep slope and all these other buildings that they're talking about. 2 other points. One that has not been made tonight. The developer admits in the papers that we read for tonight that the land is in the wildfire hazard map. We didn't discuss that. But he's wrong to claim that there's no concerns for flooding for the FEMA mapping. The areas within the FEMA floodplain, any of us that were here in 2013 that were here experiencing the flood that blocked us from getting out of the valley will tell you it is a flood area, and adding that much more runoff would make it even worse.
Thank you.
Okay. Please don't tease us.
Alan, the Mark Grable, the Mark Myers, and then Bill Macy after that.
Hey, I'm Alan Baird, and I live at 671 Circuit. And for perspective, that's right at the intersection of Soda Creek Road and what we're calling South Pine Slope Road. So I'm right on the corner. I don't have much to add to this, but I'm opposed to the change voting, mostly because of the density of the project. I think there's just too much. The traffic is going to be bad. I just want to say, as far as the traffic study was done, it's just my opinion, but I think that the way it was done painted a pretty bleak picture, but I think it kind of downplayed it a little bit, actually. For one thing, it was done one day on a Tuesday. That's when they collected the data. The data was collected on North Pine Slope and Soda Creek. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, the main primary axis is going to be south, Soda Creek, and Pine Slope. Okay, so the speeds are different up there. That information that they took from the collected data was just kind of interpolated into the north side somehow. I don't know how to do that. But, it's something to think about. And it was too beautiful. So, like Chris was saying, the traffic has changed. The construction's done. The speed traffic is coming down a little bit for 2 years. So. That's all I can add to this. Anyways, I've been there for 40 years. I was hoping to have a nice, quiet retirement in place, but who knows now.
Thank you. Mark Grable?
Yeah, Julie.
You left, okay. Mark Waller.
Hi, my name is Mark Fowler. I live at 1120 Minor Street, and I thought it was interesting that the applicant looked at the staff here and said, well, you guys can look at this comprehensive plan, and that was one of the sites that was envisioned for multifamily thing. Well, it's one thing when you're brainstorming and you're trying to find all the different places of land that you could build. And then you're going to say, well, where's the feasible ones? You never addressed that, and that's why when I guess our staff went up there and said, oh, no, this isn't going to work. How can you build so many things up here?
So you have to start crossing off the ones that, hey, just because it looks like it's a lot of land and it would hold a lot of houses, that some of them just can't be built, okay? And then one of the slides, the applicant said that, oh, if I built 45 or so houses, but I'd have to sell them for $1 million to $1.5 million to $2 million. I assume that's because that's the amount that the assessed value and the extra millage would bring in, because, as his own words, it costs just as much to put the sewers in there if there's 250 houses as 45 houses. And, well, I'm sorry, then maybe you're picking the wrong place to build, and especially when you bought the land, oh, the city's on my side. They have that as a potential area of development. It's zoned R1. I don't think people make bets hoping that the politics will change to allow you to do more. It was a gamble. And even the city admits that, hey, that wasn't the best site to build on, and maybe it should continue to stay as R1. So basically that's all I have. Oh, the traffic, oh my God. Luckily, where I live, 1120 Minor, I rarely have to drive anywhere, okay? I'm one of the lucky ones. I get to walk everywhere I go, okay? Even at times I'll walk all the way down to Safeway and carry our groceries home, which these poor people up there, you know, that would be a few hours walk, and it's, you know, it's almost uphill both ways.
Bill Macy. Going to be Ken Steele. No, Liz Hogan. Hogers. And then Jake Mullen be after that. No.
I'll just got to point out a few things. Everybody's done a great job presenting tonight. I'm just going to point out a few things from having been a past mayor and what went on up there. The sewer lines are mentioned as being accessible. It was built by Boyd Quinn way back when. It's a private sewer line that goes down there. It was never engineered, and the city doesn't have the easements. The other thing is, when we did the Bristlecone development, what stopped it right in its tracks at the end was one person wouldn't give the easement for the storm drain, and they had to walk away. The property owner wouldn't give an easement to cross, for the storm drain to cross the property.
Ken Steele.
Hi, I'm Kim Steele. I live at 1414 Wall Street, and I wanted to say I'm against the rezoning. And one of the reasons I'm against the rezoning is I have an incredible view. I get to look at the water wheel, I get to look at the waterfall, I get to look up at Pine Slope. I love it. Except once in a while, folks get curious and they drive up there. Because of where I live, I don't have curtains on any windows. So I'll see them motor around, but the lights shine in my bedroom, they shine in my dining room, they shine in my living room. And I can't imagine cars going every 13 seconds. I'm really concerned about the light pollution up there and what might happen with this development. Another note is that Drew was going to say Fort Collins.
Fort Collins grew from 100,000 to 150,000 people in 30 years. The net effective growth on this community with that one development would be the same thing, but in one house. I'm sorry, my notes were wrong.
Thank you.
Thanks for allowing that. Don't throw anything
Liz.
I don't see this.
And Jake Mullen. David O'Malley. Susan Raymond. Keith Buckley and Steve Axtell.
Well, I'm Jared Mullen. My family owns 1425 Main Street. And I'm making notes of what to try and say here. I don't know, there's just so many things wrong about this. What this town is what these people are talking about, the quality. These people don't have the option to change and move and go find something else. But here, that you're a long time. I think it makes sense to try and build a development where the people that come in are connected to the community in the same way that these people are. You start building affordable housing, everything, you're going to have people that are trying to make ends with their friends live there so they can make it work. It's just not the same. There's not that connection. I'd say, you know, if you're going to develop, try and see how you can maintain a connection to the community so that the new people coming in are connected and they care. You know, because if you don't, you're going to find that all of a sudden you have those things and it's such a good place to be. And I came home on an airplane overnight, and you know what? Now in their wisdom, they're starting to make, I have the back seat in my face. You know, it used to not be so bad. And anyhow, it's the same idea. And the other thing I was thinking is there's times in downtown, you know, on one of these main streets where in the summertime people are going, what happens when you have a traffic jam? What happens when there's a problem? You know what I mean? It just, you have to have 50 cars leaving every 5 minutes, and you can't because there's no place to go. And, you know, but I would respectfully ask that you don't approve something like this and try and work out a way where the property owner should have the right to develop his property, but it should be in a way that serves the community in its best interest. And I don't know, maybe you want to try and work out a way to purchase the property from him and do something else with it. So it becomes, I don't know. Anyhow, thank you so much.
David O'Malley.
I'm actually not going to speak, thank you.
No. Susan Raymond, is that correct? Keith Buckley. No. And the last on the list is Steve Axtell.
And I think it's all been said.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I have just one thing that didn't get brought up tonight that I would like just one more second. I didn't use up all my.
I'll give her my time.
I'll be very, very quick. I did read through a ton of documents. Margie Marlin, 633 Pine Slope. I read through tons of documents. And one thing that I did find, so they did talk a little bit about, they were talking about 30 houses in the next 10 years, but they were also talking, I mean, that would be rental properties. And I wanted to make clear that when they were talking about building houses, it's a much less. It is what, here, without my glasses, it is like 10 to 20 resident only. And part of the problem with having houses that are affordable for our area is that they're more affordable for people who are making a lot more money in the city, and they're going to be up here with second homes, and then they're not going to be supporting our community either. That's my point. And that's, I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone that has commented. So noted. At this time, we have reserved, and I'm going to do it in the proper order, the staff testimony and then the applicant. Well, this time, by the way, I need to close the public comment. Thank you. I mean, you're looking at me. So that closes the public comment period. At this time, I would like the traffic engineer to come up to, I'd like to ask a couple questions there that have been brought up, if I could, please. Answer to the best of your ability. It was brought up by public comments, several items. You had addressed the Minor Street Soda Creek intersection with turn lanes. One thing I'd like to clarify on that is under your study there, and you probably know it better than I can find it in this file, is that you had, coming down Soda Creek, recommended right-hand and left-hand turn lanes. Is that correct?
There is a eastbound right on Minor that goes on to Soda Creek, and then a left-bound also. So the turn lanes would be on Minor Street going on to Soda Creek.
And nothing on Soda Creek turn lanes?
Just on Minor.
Okay. And then your study was done before we had approved the final development plan on the health clinic, which is going on that same intersection.
Correct.
So that does not, your study does not address the health clinic being at that corner too and all that usage Because we designed this to be one way where it comes out on Soda Creek out of the health clinic. So that's not addressed in the traffic study either. So there's additional Soda Creek traffic that's going to happen there. And then this has happened since you've done your study, and it was brought up by the public. I went to the dump. I made the mistake of going to the dump on a Saturday about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and good Lord, I never imagined how much traffic comes down Bear Creek to Soda Creek, which is just astronomical how much it was, and that's not in this study either. So had you been aware of what happens there? So when I-70 gets back up, your GPS runs you through Evergreen and down Blue Valley Acres. And it's just crazy how much traffic there is now because of the GPS.
Yeah,
so that's not in your study either, correct?
And I'm not familiar where Bear Creek is.
It's just above your South Pine Slope Road.
So it would have included that in the total traffic for Soda Creek.
But I think please let us get through this. So how long ago was your study?
Study was in, I believe the count was 2018.
So it's a couple years old, and what has changed here is just tremendous. Alan?
Yeah, just Alan Peeblebach, Community Development Planner. So the traffic study was a couple of years old, and we did request Carrie Moore help me for Carrie. Thank you, McDowell. We asked her to update the traffic study. That's what you see with that letter on the front. Fred, didn't much of this be considered there was background traffic already?
Some of it would. The Clear Creek County Health Department, that project at Minor and Soda Creek wouldn't have been.
Was not. That was projected, remember, Mr. Chair, at about 450 trips per day, give or take, off the top of my head. So an additional 450 trips per day. So the letter you saw on top was the update to the old traffic study, taking into account the existing, the new improvements.
The counts were done in July of 2018. It's typical with CDOT and with most municipalities, the counts are good for 2 years, so they would still be considered.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
And just one clarification that might, I'm not sure if it's confusing or not, but one gentleman had noted the variance in the trips per day, the 2,031 versus the 2,591, and that's included in the cover letter. There was an update, not to the full study, but just to some of the figures based on a reduction. So the 2,031 is the correct number, the 2,591 is in the old report.
That was based on the higher density that was originally proposed.
Okay.
So it was reduced to 2031. It was originally higher because I think they were 300 or X 300 something originally.
Go ahead.
Can you talk about the comment that was made today about the numbers we're taking from the north Pine Slope Road and not from the south?
So, yeah, and the counts were done on North Pine Slope Road. I'm not exactly sure why, unless at one point that was going to be considered the main access, that it was moved to South Pine Slope. That's not, I guess, untypical to do that and then to adjust it for another location. And then also, generally, the volumes on both of those roads are relatively small, so it wouldn't really make a large impact to the overall study. But generally, it was taken at North Pine Slope, and I think that might have been considered the main entrance at some time. I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
Several people have commented that the study, the counts were done on a Tuesday. Is that accurate?
And I'd have to look at the date, but typically when you do counts, you do them on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday.
Okay.
To get an average.
So it was a weekday.
Yeah. Monday and Friday aren't considered average, and weekends aren't considered average, so you're looking for an average count.
I was just curious.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? If not, thank you very much for your time and staying with us. And those going to be a long one and a late one. Okay, that's city staff. At this time, Alan, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Not unless you have any questions for me,
That's-
Mr. Chair.
So did I ask you got anything to add first? No?
I have nothing to add yet.
Do we have any questions out of Alan, our city planner, from the commission? Nope, thank you too.
I guess my question, but it might go back to Kevin, is
No, Kevin's gonna get a chance yet here too. We're doing everybody in order here. Okay. Thank you, Alan. Okay, at this time, the applicant, if you have anything else you would like to state or answer any questions?
No.
Nothing else you'd like to state? Commission have any questions? You, something?
well, it just goes back to that property. Without that property, do you have access to Pine Slope? The
Without,
city property.
yes, yes.
It's not hitting the main road, is it hitting?
No.
Okay,
No.
well,
You weren't gonna do anything with that anyway.
okay.
Sure, Alan.
He's shaking his head, okay.
So the property use area one is not required for this access. I will say, if you go on the Clear Creek, Clear maps and you look at property ownerships, there's a lot of property on there that's owned by, can you help me?
Surety.
Thank you, Surety Investments. I have not seen proof of access yet. Now, you might have it, but I've seen that much of that crosses private property. That would be something he would absolutely have to provide, but I am not convinced at this point that he has access all the way to the site.
Alan, we provided that. I do,
Does everyone hear?
I would like to answer that question. We submitted 18 months ago copies of the easements that the previous owner worked out with surety. Those easements are permanent and they exist. And somewhere in that 200 pages of records, I would expect it's in.
So if this went through the final development plan, the city would probably have the county, Kim and company, do a legal research to make sure that's the case, but we're not going to do that with every site.
Can I answer your question? Anybody else have any questions of city staff or the applicant? Hearing none, at this time I will close the public hearing for Soda Creek's Highlands proposed rezoning. Now it's our turn. So at this point, it's up to the commission to recommend the rezoning or not. At this point, we can ask questions amongst ourselves. Any discussion we have is us. That's why I cleared all this with everybody else. So it's up to us now to decide what the commission plans to do, intentions, and a vote. Correct me on one thing here. If we elect to do nothing, it stays the way it is, correct? Or do we have to have a motion to?
No, you have to make a motion for council, and then you make.
So we got to make a motion, a recommendation to council
Either
to
recommend or don't recommend, or.
recommend or not recommend. So we do have to have a motion either way. We just can't sit on it and leave it the way it is. That was the question I had for you. Now, did you have something else to add?
Well, recommend. You can either recommend to approve or recommend to deny.
Right. We can't just leave it the way it is. We have to. We have to have an action.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
And then I just want, while you're deliberating, I just want to remind you to please use the review criteria that's in the staff report, but it's the code section 21-108 for the rezoning and the criteria for the 21-107 plan development.
That's right. I did see that there. I apologize. It's been a long time since I read those pages.
So once the recommendation is made to council, the council rules on it also, can the developer bring it back?
Bring it back.
Can they reapply to have it rezoned down the road
it's a different application, I don't think there's reconsideration in our code.
I think it says like a year.
Yeah, usually
I think I read that it takes a year or something. Right?
Sorry guys, my paper is in disarray.
Council, would you please direct us towards what you had just stated?
So the staff report on page 2, it goes into it starts with the review criteria for rezoning.
Yep.
There's a lot going on and spoken about. I want to make sure we are deliberating about the rezone and the criteria in the code. And then on page 11 of the staff report, the second code section you're going to be deliberating and talking about is the plan development. So there's always, review criteria. Does it propose, is it in conformity with the comprehensive plan? Everything that Alan went through is in the code. So I just want to make sure we stay focused and you're reviewing this application with the criteria in the code. And not maybe talking about how it's going to look, or you're talking about the.
Can I just ask you? So if we're moving to approve or deny, we are moving to approve or deny the rezoning.
Correct.
And that's all we're discussing.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's a lot of review criteria.
There's plenty of staff recommendations that have already been.
Well, review criteria in the code. So the bulleted points in an Alan's staff report is from the code. So you're using this review criteria to deliberate to make a decision.
Okay, my question is, do you need me to read that whole damn thing?
No.
We're a leader for a while.
They have not proposed a motion to us. We're going to have to make our own motion. But at this time, is there any discussion amongst the commission about this? You'd like to say at this point? After hearing all the testimony?
I have one thing to say, and it's very brief, and I think somebody in the audience did say it, and I just want to say it because I think it's pretty open for this late at night. And I said, what could happen, as indicated in our comp plan, doesn't mean that it should, if it adversely affects our community. And I think that's what we've heard over the course of the audience. We do take your words very seriously. I think Alan did a tremendous job of presenting to us his opinions and working with the applicant. We do appreciate your conundrum, but that's really all I wanted to say, is that I do hear what just because we approve that that's a place that it could happen doesn't mean it should happen.
I caught that too. Develop the property that suits the community. And I want to say to Alan, this whole thing, and I have to say I was a little taken back by some of the negative emails that went back and forth to Alan about him not doing what was right or doing what was right for the town and working too much with the developer, one side or the other. And I was surprised at some of the very negative emails at the job that he was doing, where that's what his job is. It is to meet the needs of everybody here in the community, but also work with the developer to bring this whole package to us for us all here to discuss it. So, thank you, Al.
Yeah. I agree.
And I also would like to commend Alan and the applicant Kevin, as well as the professionalism that actually got this meeting together at this point finally. I know you've been working at it for a while. In the community, thank you all for being here. Thank you for behaving. I tried to make everybody laugh on that. When you have this big of a crowd, it's really tough to keep the emotions in check and to have everybody speak appropriately and not to each other. You guys did great. Thank you very much. It makes it much easier for us up here and as myself as chairman to conduct this meeting. I've been on Planning Commission now for, what we determined, 28. It's my 29th year now. This is the biggest crowd that I've ever seen in here in all of 29 meetings. But thank you very much for being here. At this point, if there's no further discussion amongst the commission, I would entertain a motion. However,
I don't mind doing it.
Could you go slow, please?
Well, I still need to work out how I'm gonna do it, so.
It's where the stars are, that page.
And the next one, yeah.
And that one there, and then council, if you would.
I always
pay
stumble
attention
through this, so just bear with
and
me.
correct her if she makes any mistakes there, please.
Thanks. All right. I'm sorry, I still need you to help me with this, because I'm not sure, but I'm going
I can read them letters, it's a smaller one.
But am I reading that?
The section of the government is zoning application part?
Because what I was just letting Nina is.
So I know during your deliberations, if you guys kind of flush out a little before you make a motion, that you analyze the review criteria.
Is that what you just want us to say?
Yes.
That well, I kind of just said that with my statement earlier, so can we merge that?
It doesn't need to be like each specific thing, but if some of you can speak to what you're thinking, so it, you know, and looking at the review criteria, because you need to make
So
your decision.
the first one being is whether the
You can
proposed
go through each one, but yeah.
zoning is conformity with the comp plan, which includes the land use. And then the other one is whether the proposed land development adequately mitigates any adverse impacts to its causes without limitation, adverse impacts on traffic, view corridors, noise, property values, and provision of public service.
Do you want me just to speak to that and then make a motion to approve or disapprove?
So yeah, your motion would be to, well, you're recommending to the city council either denial or approval of this rezoning.
Okay.
City council.
So
but before you make a motion, if you maybe you could all talk us to a little bit as to what you looked at the review criteria and.
Can we speak during this as alternates?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can speak on it, you're just not going to be on the roll call to vote.
My biggest thing is the transportation section of the review criteria. I agree with the council or with the city staff that it just doesn't need that.
I think it has to improve with there's many law that goes into it, and affordable housing is probably not close to that. So I don't think we've covered that.
If my concerns are known, it's going to be traffic and density. I really think that that particular parcel can accommodate that dense of a population, and I certainly know that Soda Creek and Minor cannot sustain that sort of traffic.
Kate made the statement earlier, the comp plan, I think our intention in the comp plan was, yes, you look at areas that could be developed. I don't think this meets that criteria as we intended at that point.
I just have one thing to say. I think that it's going to, it won't completely changes the lives of the current residents of Pine Slope and Soda Creek. I don't think the development should impact the people that have to, bear to all the traffic and the noise. I remember the mess we had on Colorado Boulevard. It was a straight road. And that took, 2 years? So I think that's a little too much for up there.
Well, I think traffic and density are the two problems that I see as it stands.
And another deal I had here too, it says provision of public services. Well, our first speaker happens to also be the chief of police. It's right there at ground zero, he called it, and he didn't get to address the additional services that his department is going to have to provide with this high of a density too. He's going to have to provide additional services for anything built anywhere, but this is pretty high density and it's not easy response to get to. And like was being said by one of the community people, that the fire mitigation is another issue that, yes, Kevin, you explained that you have to remove less trees for this kind of a build out, but the problem is once the fire starts there, everybody's got to go out the same way to evacuate. Like Floyd, I hate to bring it up, but Floyd Hill has that problem. They got one way and one way in and out. And we're going to have the same situation here. It's just something that wasn't addressed, but I see here at provision of public services. So once again, at that point, I'll entertain a motion from
All right,
council.
I'm just gonna make it up as I go on. I move to advise council to disallow the rezoning of,
Recommend denial, are you saying recommend denial?
recommend denial of the rezoning of Pine Soda.
I'll second it.
And do we need any more to that?
Upon reviewing the factors in the code.
I should probably say Soda Creek Highlands is
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the original, the real name.
Yeah, we're only here for this. Yeah.
That's okay? All right.
Already got it. Is there any further discussion?
I guess the big thing I had is, that's why I was asking if this could be brought back with difference of what you've heard here tonight amongst the people. I don't even know if the 45 homes is something that would go through.
Well, I would address that, I believe, if they got to resubmit.
I know, but I'm just making that comment.
Okay. At that point, I would ask our secretary to read back the motion before we ask for a roll
I'm
call.
gonna ask Kate to read it back.
Okay, out of my brain, sure. I'm making a motion to ask council to deny the rezoning of Soda Creek, recommend the denial for the Soda Creek Highlands.
Rezoning.
Rezoning, sorry.
Okay.
Well, based on all the review, review items that we just noted.
Review criteria in the code.
Thank you. That.
Yeah, you got that? Got it.
We had a second, I'm waiting to get the nod. She's writing it down, so we got it.
Got it.
Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Who second that? William Mayer.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Cindy Olsen.
Yes.
John Reimer.
Yes.
Chuck Howard.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Still gonna have to go deal with city council.
Are you adjourning the meeting now?
Just getting ready to do that.
You gotta go to city council.
Oh, don't you know the other one?
Yes. Okay, so we have discussion. Over ordinance 4, number 20, I did that already. I just did that out of order.
Yeah.
I did that out of order from the agenda. Is there any other business to come before the March 4th, 2020 Planning Commission? If not, adjourn the
Those were our marching orders that the county asked us to cease parking. Hopefully for So like, Now, you know, more stations on Silver Creek. They have a hospital. You have to remind going that way for free parking. So she.